Hey, what's up, Jason? I tried to post a video response to you earlier today, but the sound wasn't working, and it's kind of ironic because in that original video, I was trying to express how I could feel the intention and the energy that you were giving off, even if I didn't hear the words you were saying, and that the meaning you were trying to convey was clear just based on that energy, and it even though you recorded the video a couple of weeks ago, that intention and that energy was still present, and it speaks to the power of the message. Um, and I wholeheartedly agree and understand where you're coming from in the sense that what we conceive of as ourselves, as that individual private mind that separates us ultimately from other people, is really it's sort of a repression of some kind, or a refusal to really look at the trick that is going on in order to get us into that frame of mind in the first place. Where, like you said, we on the surface pay attention to these frivolous details, um, and lose the underlying exchange of energies that really dictate what we do and how we respond to other people's behavior. But the thing is, though, even becoming aware of this, of the way that energy is exchanged, it doesn't mean that that you gain control over it. Because if an insecure person, you know, comes into my field and I respond to them, if I'm going to communicate, I'm going to have to empathize. And immediately by empathizing, I'm entering that collective space, that shared awareness. And so, you know, their insecurities, their emotional hangups are my emotional hangups, my insecurities, because I'm participating in communicating with them in that state of awareness. Because the awareness is shared. The verbal mind, the inner monologue that we continually get stuck going around in circles with, is the very surface that doesn't do anything. Like, you ever try to figure out a problem in your head, really work out all the details? You don't ever decide like that. What ends up happening is, it comes time for whatever the decision was, and you end up deciding emotionally. You just do whatever happens to feel right in that moment, and all the talk that you were doing has nothing, to do with what you ultimately end up doing. And that's my experience, at least. But just the idea that consciousness is shared, that consciousness is collective, at least at that fundamental level, it can be overwhelming at first because, even if you have all your personal details in order, our species as a whole, and all sentient beings on this planet, are suffering a great deal. And, normal life would be full of suffering, but it's intensified today. I mean, there's almost 7 billion people on this planet. We still think that war is somehow the solution to problems. People are starving. Um, as advanced as we like to think we are, 3 billion people still live on less than $1 a day. And all of this suffering is my suffering and your suffering. Even if you live in the beautiful city of San Francisco, and are going to school and getting an education, and underneath the surface details of our individual lives is this collective trauma, and until every sentient being is liberated from this, we will all be sharing in the suffering. And I think the more you are able to come to terms with your own personal hang-ups, the more you become aware of the collective task of healing the world. And while on a certain level it's all fine, I mean, the suffering which these beings are experiencing is a result of this illusion of separateness, this strange idea that somehow there is something which was born the ego or the mind or our identity as individuals, and because it was born will die. And so, we conceive of our existence as finite, and, that we all eventually have to die alone. That whole idea is just that. It's an idea. I mean, none of us remember being born. None of us remember snapping into this egoic consciousness, because there really is no ego. You never snapped into it. It's only this trick that we constantly play on ourselves and on each other to convince us, to perpetually convince us that we're separate. And it's a lot of work. I mean, it's a struggle to maintain this illusion that causes so much suffering. And so you start wondering, why on earth would we get into such a trap? And I think it's got to be because underlying all of it, we know it's just pure bliss. I mean, ultimately there is one person, and we are all the voices in the head of this person. And in our actions on a day-to-day basis, we are this person, this divine person, trying to learn something from itself. It's like fractured itself into all these little individual pieces, these individual bodies, and then attempted to regain its unity through this drive towards love, which at times causes us to hate each other. But underlying the hatred is this desire to love, because why do we suffer and hate? Because we know the potential of unity and wholesomeness and love is there. And so it sort of drives this evolutionary process such that this divine being, who was already whole before he or she fractured him or herself, but somehow was lacking something. And this process of separation into all of us individuals is an attempt by this larger person to gain a deeper understanding that they didn't have prior. And so our task here on earth is to realize this unity despite all of our differences. And it's a tremendous responsibility to fully accept and recognize. Because not only do you have to be responsible for yourself, which is hard enough for most people to worry about, you have to be responsible for everyone. And recognize that whether you like somebody or hate somebody, you're always projecting. Because fundamentally, you're already one with them. The whole species is a single river of consciousness, and no matter how hard you try, you're never going to be able to swim upstream. We're in this together. And all we can hope to do as individuals is send out these ripples of energy that affect others in a positive way and lead them to pass along the favor. And eventually, one by one, people will stop dreaming their separate existences and realizing the kind of co-creation that you're talking about. And all of a sudden, this nightmare, this dream of separateness becomes lucid, and we all recognize the tremendous potential we have as conscious beings. I mean, think about all the evolutionary work that nature has gone through up to this point to give us these abilities, and we're squandering them. So we've got to take responsibility. And while on one level everything may be fine, on another level everything is completely a disaster. And I think more and more people are waking up to that fact. And it's taking that kind of a crisis, kind of planetary crisis that we're in at this moment, to push people into this evolutionary awakening. But, I see it more and more in myself and in others and in our interaction together. So obviously this evolutionary bottleneck is speeding up the process of awakening, and it's great to see. And Jason, I really appreciate your perspective, and I've watched a couple of your other videos, and keep it coming, man. Let the conversation continue.